Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Audrey Monkey, and I am your host. For more than 3 decades, I've been a summer camp director, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents. I really enjoy sharing stories, tips, and ideas to help others who care about young people raise a generation of kind, self-reliant, optimistic kids who become thriving adults. If you're interested in summer camp, parenting, or happiness, you've come to the right place. In episode 50, I'm talking with KJ Dell'Antonia, author of How to Be a Happier Parent, Raising a Family, Having a Life, and Loving Almost Every Minute. Well, hi, KJ. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted.
Well, I'm so excited to talk to you about your book that's coming out soon. It is called How to Be a Happier Parent. I'm going to read the subtitle. Raising a Family, Having a Life, and Loving Almost Every Minute. So to start with, just kind of talk a little bit about sort of the format of your book and how you came up with what each of your chapters are about.
Sure. So I spent 5 years as the parenting/family editor of a blog at the New York Times, and I wrote a ton during that time, and I interviewed a ton, and I read more than 1,000 essays. I've never counted, by other parents, and in the process, I just realized that we're doing a lot of great things, but we're not necessarily enjoying it the way that I think. And I don't mean like every day is supposed to be rainbows and unicorns, but we just, there was a lot of stress around family life as opposed to it being sort of a refuge and a source of joy. And so I got to wondering what's wrong? Like, what's wrong here and how can we fix it? So then, and I wanted to research and I wanted to write a book, and I tried to, I spent a long time trying to figure out, my first idea was I'm going to write a book about how to make this fun. And then I sort of started making a list of fun things. And I was like, I don't want to do fun. I mean, I love fun, but I don't want to do more. I do enough. That's like the whole problem. So instead, I just wanted to look at those day-to-day areas where you're just not happy. I mean, who's happy when you're standing in your garage door in the morning shrieking at 4 children to get in a car? Who's happy when you're trying to cook dinner with a toddler on one leg and a baby on one arm and a 5-year-old going, can I watch TV? There are just these times and these moments and these things that are hard for everyone. So I came up with my personal list, and then I reached out to basically everybody I knew, and I said, okay, what sucks most, basically? And I got this list. Chores, discipline. My discipline was a huge response. Mornings, meals, sibling stuff, even like vacations and birthdays. Those are times that, the vacations and birthdays in particular, we think are going to be happy and fun, and they're often not. And then I looked at, in each area, what goes wrong? Like, what is society imposed on us? Like, it's really hard to be happy if you're not a morning person. You have to get yourself out the door by 7, and now suddenly you have to get 4 other people out the door by 7, people who don't want to go out the door, who don't understand why they have to go out the door, and who are going to like poop in their diaper the minute you send them in their car seat. So that's tough, and that's sort of externally imposed. And then there's the things that we do to ourselves by setting really high expectations, or just making choices that seemed great in the moment and are now not so great in retrospect. So there was sort of I looked at what we can change and, what we just sort of have to learn to adjust. And then I tried to talk to either experts or people that were pretty happy about these different areas and just distill their advice into things people could really use to make some changes so that your day-to-day life can be happier.
Yeah, well, that is exactly what your book does. And it's great how if a parent wanted to just read about one particular area, it doesn't have to be a sit down. I ended up reading the whole thing just because I was talking to you. But I was just thinking that it really could be based on different times of your ages of your kids or what the areas of more stress are for your family. They really could just pick up your book and read that chapter or reread it and just get some ideas and maybe that, so I think it could be really worked that way. It's kind of a book that you want to keep around because the problem areas sort of evolve and change as your kids get older.
They really do.
So one area that particularly resonated with me, and it's a theme that you bring up several times in the book, is just about fostering more independence. And I think a lot of it is about kind of as a parent letting go, whether it's kind of asking a little bit more of our children, helping them prepare for adulthood rather than expecting this like perfect thing. And I remember there's one part in your book where you're talking about chores, and I just laughed because you talk about needing to remind kids about chores like for sometimes years. And I think that is so true that kids will try to avoid them sometimes and just see if they can wear parents down. But let's talk about what you learned about chores and kind of giving kids responsibility and how important that is.
I learned a lot of really interesting things. So one of the biggest things I learned is that, well, there are so many, like I want to just say them all because they were huge. But so one thing that I learned is that your kids will do chores. And any method that you choose to use can persuade your kids, can get your kids to do chores. You can have a star chart. You can pay them to do chores. You can take money away if they don't do chores. You can, agree to perform a dance if they do their chores. It doesn't make any difference. What really makes the difference is that you actually do it.
Mm-hmm. Follow through.
The really annoying thing about whether or not your kids do chores it is not on them. It is on us. And parents who really either require that their kids do chores or alternatively actively need for their kids to do chores, those kids do chores. They just do. So the miserable part about the fact that my kids don't always do all the chores that I want is that that's really entirely, like I can't put that on them. I can't put that on society. Well, a little bit, because the fact that most kids are not expected to do chores, that a lot of us put homework ahead of chores or sports ahead of chores, or just feel like, or have housekeepers, which I have somebody who cleans my house, and that is fantastic. But, it's still important for our kids to do work. Anyway, if your kids are in an environment where no other kids are doing chores, that's going to make it harder. But still, if you insist, if you repeat, if you require, if you enforce, your kids will do chores. So that was one thing that I learned. Another thing that I learned that was kind of by the by was that the people who did this successfully, this was kind of interesting, every single person I talked to who was like, yeah, my kids do chores and it's pretty much fine, other than the ones who, like I said, needed it for one reason or another. All right, not quite every single person, but a bunch of them, they gave their kid a chore for a year. Not like a week, not an alternating every day, the wheel rotate. And believe me, I've had that wheel, but for a year. And so we've tried that in our family this year, and it has worked. And then the last thing that has been a big change for us around chores is separating it into these two different things. There are two things going on here. You really want your kids to help out, right? And you're going to be happier. Like, nobody's happy when they're cleaning the kitchen and everyone is laying around with their feet up on the table watching you. This is not a happy making thing. So you want help. That's one piece of the puzzle. It would be nice if they helped without being asked, but that has to be like totally separate. Those are two different things.
Yeah, I really like that part because, of course, I always want my kids to do things cheerfully and without being asked. However, that's not realistic. And it was funny. I think you read Catherine Perlman's, isn't it? Ignore It. the book.
Yes.
It's so good. And I think you sort of allude to this too. If your kids are doing chores and maybe they're nonverbals, let's just say, are not positive as they do the chore, you just ignore it. You just ignore it, because I used to be like, well, gosh, be cheerful as you do these. And now it's so funny because my kids, they are, teenage boys, they do the dishes every night, and they have it split up. Like, one does the hand washing of the pots and pans, and one gets everything in the dishwasher and then does the counters. And they're very efficient. They're very good at it. And they don't actually need to be reminded to do that, because it's been, like you said, it's kind of like it's been years, that they've been doing it, and they both do it. And the only exception that they don't need to do that is if they cook dinner. So if they, make tacos and make dinner, then they're off the hook for dishes, because that's kind of our thing. If you cooked, you don't have to do the dishes or whatever. Sure. But yeah, sometimes, they're actually pretty good now, because they just know it's not like they're having a bad attitude is not going to make me say, well, just forget it, I'll do it. They know that won't happen. So they're pretty good.
Right.
There was a time where I could see they were just, one of them in particular was kind of pushing to see if I'm crabby enough about this, will mom just say, oh, forget it, go. I'll do it. Right. And it's funny. I like how you talk about that you can expect chores and you can make them do it. You can't force them to be happy about it or be super pleasant, but eventually if you're consistent, they're just going to do it.
That's right. They don't have to like it, but they do have to do it.
Yes. And there's a quote in your book that you said, I quote, "You're not raising future adults. You are raising future adults, not perfect children." And I think that falls under that category. So we need future adults who know how to clean up a kitchen. They don't have to be, that's what they need to do how to do it. The perfect child would be smiling and, oh, I love helping in the kitchen, which that, rarely exists.
And probably wearing a really cute apron.
Yes, exactly. Smiling and asking, what else can I do, Mom, to help you out today?
Yeah.
So that I thought was really good. And I do think it's really worthwhile for parents to make this a priority, even if it's just 1 or 2 chores a day. When you were talking about housekeeping, one trick that I've done in my house is my kids happen to now, because we only 2 are still at home out of the 5, they have their own bathrooms. Even though I have a housekeeper, I tell her not to go in there, because I deserve it. I'm working and using. So it's funny. I was very specific with the housekeeper. I said, don't go in this room or this room. These are, whatever. And so that's worked out. And then the other thing with laundry for my kids that's worked really well is everyone just does their own. And so they do the whole process themselves from start to finish, fold and put away. And so it's not by year, but it's all the time. So again, it's just one of those things that's ended up being pretty just standard. Everyone knows. And I do there's a few that need the little reminder that, this needs to be done by 4 p.m. today if you want to do X, Y, Z. And then others just do it because it's habit now. But so I don't know. I funny because at camp, so the kids all do chores very cheerfully and willingly at camp because they're with a group and they're with their counselor and they want to please the counselor. And there was a part of your book where you talked about one of the methods that can help you be a happier parent is to let someone else teach them something. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and kind of what you learned about that aspect of how sometimes it's okay to sort of let one part of something that you want your kid to learn be done by someone else.
So that fits into the category for me of letting them be, they are a separate person from you. You don't have to, you're not responsible for every element of their humanity. You don't have to be the one who teaches them everything. So one of the things that I suggest when your kids are involved in a sport or an activity is just, take some time and sit back. If you want, frankly, I suggest that you go somewhere else, but that's a different, if you need to be there, enjoy watching your kid interact with another human being and either cheerfully do what they ask or not, and letting that person deal with it. Don't sort of be taking notes and when we get home, I'm going to talk to Junior about how he treated. Sometimes that's necessary, but, a lot of the time you can leave that in the space of somebody else, and other people are often going to be more successful. It's an oddity of my personal family life that we run a horse barn, which is managed by other people, and goodness knows the lessons are taught by someone else. But my kids work there every morning before school, which sounds idyllic and is mostly not. And literally yesterday, the barn manager who lives down there said, no offense, but because I was telling her I would not be there this morning because I'm partly because I'm with you.
Right.
She said, no offense, but your kids work a lot better when you're not here.
Mm-hmm.
This does not surprise me at all. And there have
Right.
been other things. I could not teach my oldest to ski, although I can teach kids to ski, because when I was teaching him to ski, he became a wet noodle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to teach a noodle to ski. They just don't have the skills. But when other people, he's 17 and he's an amazing skier, way better than me. But that required someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, I think it's so true. And I think a lot of times kids are they're a little more brave about trying something new, and they don't look to you. I think it's good for kids to be with other adults, other supervisors, coaches, teachers, all these people, because they do often rise to the occasion and don't act like the little child that they might act more like in front of you. So I really like how you talk about that. And I think it's I have that same thing where someone like my son who, is not super excited about doing dishes. I had another mom say that she walked into her house and my son was in there doing the dishes and how good he was at it. And I was like, okay, it's kind of funny that makes me more proud than any grade or sports thing, because I want my kids to be those people that do a good job and notice things that need to get done and for other people. And maybe, at home, they're not going to have the best attitude, but I know they know how to do these things at least and are aware that it needs to get done. So, at least that made me feel really good that at least out in the world, other people are seeing this, this capable kid.
Right. And it does take a long time.
Yes.
You talked about the habit of laundry and that taking years. Everybody I talk to with chores, have said it takes years. It took more than a year for at least one of my kids to learn to say thank you to people that help. But I just, every single time. And I was laughing because I get really proud, like when we eat in the kind of place where you go to the counter and you get your food and then you eat it. And then at the end, my kids are always like, where do we clear where do we throw this stuff away? They would never and a lot of times the answer sometimes is they actually want you to leave it.
Right.
But they finally, and my kids are 12, I would say 14 and 16. So, so that took a while, but they do it.
Right. I know. Well, that really resonated with me, that whole thing that you're not going to, if you start a chore thing, you're not going to, don't think that in a week, everyone's going to be able to do these things and is going to remember to do them. There will need to be a lot of reminders. So I like that. And I think it's still worthwhile, even though
that's a different question. And, it's also okay that there are some things where you just teach them how and then they don't actually do it. I definitely talked to parents who said, well, I taught them to do laundry before they went to college and they went off and they probably made mistakes, but they never did the laundry when they were in the house. And now they're, and now they're 35 and they seem to do their laundry fine. So it doesn't have to be everything.
No,
it's just it's really important for family happiness and for kids that they be contributing to the household.
Yeah, they need purpose. And I think especially as they get older, they're capable of doing more. And, when you're both working, your parent, two working parents or a lot of single parents, oh my gosh, they need that help. Everybody needs to contribute in the household to make it function, or people won't get sleep. So this is a good segue into some of the things that you discovered in terms of how to be a happier parent have to do more with your own habits and how you do things. And so why don't you talk a little bit about the sleeping more and how you discovered how imperative that is? Oh,
I'm such a sleep zealot now. But actually always have been for my kids. So this is, mornings are hard in part because evenings are hard, because especially when your kids are in school and you are working, the day often feels like it sort of goes like this. Everything everybody else wants me to do. Finally, I have some time to do dang, it's bedtime. And that's tough. And that often goes for kids as they get older as well. But if you don't have trouble sleeping and you don't have an infant, to go to bed 8 hours before you expect to get up, it's huge. It makes this enormous difference. And there's all kinds of studies around wonderful things that it does for us as people. But just to look at the parenting front, it makes you more patient. It makes you less likely to get sick, which it certainly makes you a happier parent. You're easier with your kids, and that often that's just easier in yourself. I'm like sort of patting myself on the heart right now.
I'm 51 now. I can't survive anymore like I used to 10 years ago when I would get the kids to bed and then I'd do another couple hours of work and I'd stay up really late several nights a week and, try to, get like 6 hours of sleep. I can't do that anymore. So I've had to put in new habits for myself, which include turning off computers and phones by like 8 p.m. and getting in bed and reading every night. So I'm looking forward to that. And that's something that I like doing. So it's kind of like a fun activity in the evening or whatever, but this is so critical. So I hope any parents who are not getting enough sleep get that good advice from you that one habit could change everything in their home.
Well, and just say, if you have an infant or a toddler who's not sleeping yet, it's not your fault. You can't. Right. There are moments in life when we can't control this and we can't get what we need. So make sure that when you can get the sleep, you do. And if you can find if you have a partner, trade off. If you can find somebody to help you, there's horrible research about how much sleep you lose in your child's first year of infancy, which can then lead us into all kinds of extra reasons why maybe we shouldn't necessarily have to go and work a paying job during that time.
Right.
But, someone I know calls that a season of sacrifice. Your season of sacrifice.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I just want to end with this one thing that you brought up several times in the book, and it just has to do with kind of your outlook and how you go through all of this whole parenting, these busy years and all the things that are going on. You talk about soaking in the good and sort of changing your own outlook that, whether it's your kids who were fighting about something or some of the things that you just learned about sort of how as a parent you can just change your own outlook and then it kind of makes everything better for your family.
Our brains are really trained to be reactive and to make note of the negative because the negative is the stuff that can harm us, right? So it makes complete sense that you're going to remember, the edge of the cliff and that time you got awfully close to it more than the sunset that you were trying to look at the time. I mean, that's important. But we live in a lovely modern world where the cliffs are fairly few and far between. So it's really important to sort of take the time to look around at the good moments or even the halfway decent moments or just the times when nothing is going wrong and remind yourself, this is good. This is what I wanted. This is what the good stuff feels like. Let's mark this. And you're doing a couple things when you do that. Neurologically, you're actually training You're strengthening this sort of the happy pathways in your brain, which is not the technical term for them. But you really are building like a reservoir of happiness that will help support you when things are not so great. You're also building a reservoir of memories. We're really prone, especially as we get into I love having things go pretty much the same way. I love feeling like there's a flow to my days. But the peril of that is that they all run together. So if you take the time to say, I really want to remember, this moment, and you look around and you do some things to mark it. You notice all the scents and the smells and everything around you. You say to the people you're with, even if it's not really like, I'm really just so happy to be sitting here on this bench with you, waiting for your brother to get out of piano lessons. It's such a beautiful day, and it's just nice to be together. And those are the things that will strengthen your own sense that you're in a good place. And it's just a lovely pleasure of our Western lives that, if you're having time to listen to this podcast and the ability to listen to it, probably most things are pretty okay. I don't want to, and sometimes they're not. This is not like, let's be happy when we've just lost a parent or something like that. Those are tough times, but most of the time, most days, as a whole, we've got food, we've got shelter, we've got our lovely families, we've got, whatever health that we've got. And it's really important. It's not even so much a like, let's be grateful as it is, let's just, be aware.
Yes.
And let it be a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you said, I think you say several times in the book, just remind yourself you wanted this. You wanted this family of however many kids and all this stuff going on. And even though sometimes it's a little crazy and you need to make some changes to make it better for everybody, but at the same time, you chose this, you wanted this. And wow, there's a lot of good to soak in despite also the other things. So that was so good. Well, this has been great, KJ. Where can people find you if they want to both follow your work and also find your book?
You can certainly find me at kjdell'antonia.com. And if you just start trying to smell that, I will pop up. An easy way to find me is also to go to followkj.com. And then there's all kinds of information right there on, following me at every possible level. And you can buy the book at everywhere books are sold, as they say.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm so excited about this book, and I know that it will be really helpful to parents, and it's good timing that, it's a new school year starting up. And so this is a good time for parents to look back and see if there's one thing that they can tweak or change, or even just their outlook that could make this year their best one yet with their family.
I really enjoyed talking. Thanks for having me.
It's been my pleasure, and best of luck with your book, and we will for sure keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. I really enjoyed talking with KJ Dell'Antonia and also reading her book, How to Be a Happier Parent. For notes about our conversation and links to KJ's website and where to purchase the book, please visit my website at sunshine-parenting.com and search for episode 50. I can't believe I'm already at episode 50. And for those of you who've joined me for many episodes of my podcast, thank you so much for being part of my community here. I would love it if you would take a moment to give me a rating and review on iTunes so that other people can find the Sunshine Parenting podcast. I'm going to leave you with a quote from How to Be a Happier Parent. I'm raising future adults, not perfect children, and that looks different. Embracing that narrative has made me happier about those seeming failures. It takes time to learn to be good at being a grown-up. Personally, I'm still working on it. My kids have lots of space to improve, and we're all much better off if I'm not trying to micromanage their every move.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.